Hello, my name is Jayla Walker, and this is my interpersonal communications final project. For my final project, I chose communication perception, communication culture, emotional intelligence, verbal communication, and nonverbal communication. I chose communication perception because I've always been seen and have seen assumptions, and I learned that through assumptions it may show what people are assuming of a person even though they may or may not have done it. Like if someone will see a rumor of someone and they're just gonna base it on what they have heard someone says. I've also learned that communication and perception will also influence a person's behavior, whether it be good or bad. It will be shown through their way they speak. That's what I'm saying, the way they speak and the subject of the assumption. We also learned how people can have blind assumption, meaning they only focus on that assumption and not hear like anything else the person is saying, even if they are telling the truth or they're confessing something. They're only going to go on based on that assumption, nothing alone, until the person who is assuming that what that person did has the evidence or has that version of the truth themselves. Even if they take the truth, they may just go off the assumption alone. The second thing I learned is communication and culture. I learned that communication impacts how culture is learned to others of different cultures that are explaining it. So it would be like, for me as a black person, I would explain to someone of other ethnicity, like maybe a white person, how my culture has affected many others for many years, but they may still need to be explained that because they don't know our history. They don't know my history. They don't know the people that my family have learned from, especially since it's different from them because of the ethnicity of them being white. I've also learned that communication impacts how culture is learned. I've learned that communication and culture influence how a person will learn about who they are as a person, where they come from, how they're people, how they're the type of people who are the same as them, how they learn their history through communication. If someone is saying something on their culture, but it turns out to be a lie or it turns out to be misinformed, how they're saying it will influence what other people are going to learn and how they learn it. Like with me, I learned most of the stuff through communication of what black people have gone through, but half the stuff is basically like a scale, like 50-60%, not the full 100% of what black people go through. I'm still shocked today of what most black people have gone through, and through their communication, I learned more because it brings out the history, because they've learned more about it, and they're explaining it in a way that is saying that we're important, we're heard, we're trying to show you what your people have gone through without saying it in a native light. The third thing I learned was emotional intelligence, and that is being informed more about what emotions are and how they come about in a person, as well as different reactions a person will get depending on the situation. So it's basically like emotions are one of the main points that would drive what a person is thinking and what they're doing. So like if a person is given a bad grade on a test or an exam or something, and they try to talk to the professor but they're angry, their emotion is anger, so that is what's driving them, or maybe confusion, and that's what's driving them to do something that they may not have normally done in the heat of the moment. Another reason is that I learned different tics, whether physical or communicative tics, that a person develops on the emotional state they're in. So like, with me, my emotional tick would be playing with my fingers. It would be like either playing with my fingers or just looking down at something, but I know that I've been in trouble or something like that, or just being quiet for like a little while until the time passes where like everything is calmed down and everything like that can go back to who I am. That's my emotional tick. I look down. Other people's emotional tick may be different. Like they may crack their fingers, they may play with their fingers, they may tap on something. Emotions can drive something to do something unconsciously, was what I've learned. Another thing I learned is verbal communication, which is learning about different versions of verbal communication as well as the different verbal expressions that go together with it, as well as learning the different elements that go into verbal communication, just as being careful and sure of what you're saying to a person. So with verbal communication, it's basically saying be careful or being sure of your words before you say them out loud. Like, be careful what you're saying depending on who you're with and what the person they're talking about. Like, if somebody's having a bad day, you have to be careful what you say so that way you don't make their day maybe worse or bring them down on the emotional level a little more than what you intended to do. And the final thing I learned is nonverbal communication, which tells of a different way that a person can judge another person without even speaking to them. Or learning that certain people will convey messages to someone they know through facial expressions so that nothing can be misinterpreted as hurtful or in the wrong meaning. So nonverbal communication is basically saying that even though they're not saying it, you can see from the facial expressions what they may be thinking. Not fully thinking, but they may be thinking in that moment. So like, if you're close to a family member, close to a friend, and you're talking to them through facial expressions, they'll know what you're saying. Like you're talking to them in class, but you don't want to be heard. They do a facial expression just to get your attention and they'll know what you're saying. Or like there's a, like I'm on TV, like there's a rumor going around on a television show, seen in a high school setting. Everyone's just gonna see their facial expressions and they'll know that they're sad or they're hurt or they're angry. That's like the type of nonverbal expression of communication that people see. And in conclusion, I have learned that in the 5 main points that I've listed, they are ones that I've chosen based on how they pertain to my personal life, because every single one of these will go through me. Communication and perception. People have always assumed that maybe one of the most perceptions is basically based on my hair. Like my hair's not real, or maybe my hair is like a weave or something like that, but it's real. It's my hair. People always say that, given how the type of hair that I have, that's the perception. And people always say it to me. They'll say it to parents. They'll say it to anybody around it as soon as they see me and my hair. That's the perception that I get. Culture, communication culture. I haven't really had that one since I've basically been around my family, and I'm very much about myself type of person, or just close to my family. I've never really been the type of person who hangs out with their friends, something like that. So I've never really been based on that. Other people I have hang out, but they never really have judged me based on my culture. I had to learn an impact on my culture. This day I already know it because they're black or they're biracial or mixed. So they already know what I'm going through, or what their people have gone through. I chose emotional intelligence because I'm not very like emotional, I to say, but I do think about my emotions a lot. So because of that, I learned more about what emotions, because even though I don't show my emotions, I see them through everyone. So it shows what emotion I can see through other people, even though I can't show it through myself in certain cases or in certain atmospheres around me. Verbal communication, as you can see, actually that goes with the perception as well, because my voice is my communication and perception, because people always think something's happening because of my voice, especially like young kids, like 6-7-year-olds or maybe 5-year-olds. They'll assume about my voice even though they don't really know, and I don't really feel like explaining to them. So, with verbal communication, my verbal communication is like straight to the point. Either I will get lost in some cases, feels like straight to the point, even though I have to repeat myself maybe once or twice just to get the point about. But my verbal communication is just straightforward, get to the point in some cases. Or the story, get the story, and then get to the point. That's my verbal communication to like people that I love and stuff like that. My non-verbal communication, as you see now, this is my non-verbal communication. So, non-verbal communication is just basically like me in a state of confusion. Like I'm confused at what you're saying, or maybe I have to listen to what you're saying just to get the point across of what that person is saying. That's my non-verbal communication. And that's it. Thank you for the last few months of this class, and I hope to be able to pass. Thank you.